Welcome to the All People podcast, where we talk all people all the time. I'm your host, Elisa Southall. My goal is to improve candidate and employee experiences as well as company cultures throughout U.S. employers. We do this by leading with empathy, diversity, inclusion, equality, teamwork, and transparency. Come on this journey with me. Are you looking for an out-of-the-box solution for hiring talent? Look no further than the secret formula of hiring talent. ... It's not so secret. My ebook. I publish this through Book Boon Learning, and this ebook covers a variety of topics, all in the hiring space. I've worked with many hiring managers who all say, what is the secret formula of hiring talent? Well, I'm here to walk you through the hiring process, investing in your community, eliminating antiquated hiring practices, being the leader in pay, leveraging your resources, and success being only a few changes away. I think that if you are anybody who is looking to hire talent right now, maybe struggling to hire talent, this could be a really good resource for you. Let's change the game of hiring talent. Get rid of those old antiquated ways that we interview and go through the hiring process. And let's make it fresh and invigorating to get new talent and to get them in a more creative way. Go out today and purchase The Secret Formula of Hiring Talent. It's Not So Secret by Elisa Southall. That's me. It's only $8.99 on Book Boon Learning. I hope you guys enjoy the read. Let me know what you think. Drop some comments drop a review or two on either the Book Boon Learning page or on my website. Let me know what you think of the ebook. Thank y'all. Bye. Welcome back to another episode of All People Podcast, where we talk all people all the time. As always, I am your host, Elisa Southall, and I have the pleasure today of being with Desiree Goldey. Welcome, Desiree.
Hi, how are you? I'm so glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. I cannot wait to have a conversation about all the things that you do. But first, why don't you share with the listeners more about you and what you do in this world?
Oh my gosh, the list is so long. But I'll start with my work title, which is Director of Talent Operations and Culture for Hub Recruiting. We're an RPO and talent agency, originally headquartered in Boston, but now we're fully remote, super excited. And our parent company is ZRG Partners, which is a global talent advisory firm. I'm responsible for systems and processes and all that good stuff, but I'm also responsible for all the culture, the fun stuff, employee engagement, DEI, and all of those great things. So probably the passion part of my job is the culture piece, and the talent operations is my great practical mind at work. So excited to be here and love to talk. So I'm excited.
Well, I'm excited to have you. You're bringing a really great topic forward with you. I mean, everything that you just shared with what you do is in much demand right now. But one of the things I love that you champion and that you talk openly about is your DEI in hiring, right? And a lot of companies sort of have this as a checkbox item, but they're just doing the bare minimum, or they're doing what society tells them to do. You know, how do you see DEI hiring? What do you think we can offer to those companies who are just like not sure where to go?
Yeah, I've been talking about this for a long time, about the phoning in of doing DEI. And we're seeing the failure of those right now, right? We're seeing those projects, those moments end at companies because it was just a phoning in. It was about the numbers. It was about making it look good on paper to get more talent or to get whatever to look like an organization that was doing the work. And it's just not possible to do DEI that way. It has to be ingrained in what you're doing. And I always tell people, and this goes to my practical brain, right? Doing an audit of some of that work in the beginning. Where are you actually at in your organization, right? And where do you want to be? And then figure out where the missteps are, the miscues, and try to figure out a plan to get there. Make it actionable. Do all the things necessary, but if it's not actionable, it doesn't mean anything. So yeah, absolutely. It's a hard start for a lot of organizations, but it can be done. It can be done effectively.
Yeah. And I mean, in a quick Google search, right? I just looked up diversity hiring just because, even though DEI, that D is only one part of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you look up diversity hiring, it's based on hiring based on merit with special care taken to those that have biases, right?
Right.
And that seems pretty straightforward. Like the fact that we have to educate people on this is really challenging. And I know one of my guests talked about how in his own hiring processes, he looks at blind resumes. He make sure that names are removed, make sure that other, demographic information is removed, because we do have these locked in biases. And so if we just remove that from the hiring process, it might release some of these, challenges that people have in that hiring, the sort of that DEI realm of hiring.
Absolutely. There's ATSs now that do that for you, right? I think the new world of the ATS is figuring out, that we need to figure out how to do diversity hiring. So you're seeing all those blind resume moments and some really great particular sourcing efforts that can happen from some of these places. And I think it's important to know that technology is out there for you to utilize to help you do these things. And, I always say this too, like people are good with the familiar, right? And we talk about bias and there's of course all of that, but people are good with what they know and they stay in their comfort zone with it. So if we're in a room together, we're both women, we're hanging out, talking about all the cool stuff women do. I'm closer to you just naturally, just because of that fact. And it happens across the board. If you're in an interview with somebody who plays golf and, goes to the breweries every weekend, you're going to be like, that was the greatest interview I ever had. It's the best candidate. You're going to do all those things, right? Because it's just natural and it's comfortable. We have to be less comfortable. And that is so important in hiring in DEI. If you're not a little messy, I think I wrote about this the other day, if you're not a little messy and you're not a little uncomfortable with this, you're not going to make the motion you actually need to make.
Wow. Could that not be more true? I mean, I think about it. I'm always one of those people that says, I don't want to hire people like me. I don't want to hire people that look like me, that act like me, that think like me. And that's an intentional decision because I believe in diversity of thought, diversity of experience, diversity of culture. All of those things need to be part of an organization. And I can't get those if I have just a bunch of me's running around in my organization. And so to your point, like, people get very complacent and very comfortable in their hiring process. I know what questions I'm going to ask. I know what answers I'm looking for, and it's not that easy. It shouldn't be like, okay, I'm just literally checking all these boxes of the things I'm looking for. You should really be listening to somebody, actively listening and saying, that may not have been a perspective I thought about, but now I'm interested in maybe what they could bring to the table.
Yeah. And, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. I don't think we're listening as much as we should be. And I don't think, I talk about this on LinkedIn all the time too, is active listening is a talent. It's a skill, right? Just because you're hearing the words doesn't mean you're actually listening to what that person can actually bring to the table, the breadth of experience that they bring to the table. My experience is different. And I agree with you. I do not want to work with a bunch of Desirees. First of all, I think that company would go under. But I wouldn't want to be in it, right? It wouldn't be where I would even feel comfortable because I need to be challenged and I want to hear the new thoughts. And I don't think you make progress without doing some of that as well. And being super intentional as well. Intention's a great word. I love that word because it's the intention behind your actions that are going to make the difference. And so starting with good intention is so, so important as well.
And I'd like to talk about that intention piece, right? So yeah. I read a book called, it's by Deepa Purushothaman, and it was about, colored women in corporate America, right? And how they can change corporate America. But as I was reading this, it was all, it was very interesting to me to hear that these companies say, oh, we have this great culture that's super inclusive and super diverse. And then you have all these micro and macro aggressions happening in the workforce that get shrugged off because they're like, oh, well, that person didn't know. Well, that doesn't make it more acceptable because they didn't know, right? So it's like, let's educate the people in communities, in the companies, to say, here are the things that you're saying that you shouldn't be saying. Here are the ways that you can create a more inclusive culture, because that inclusive culture is going to help better hiring practices.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think sometimes we get stuck on the diversity part of DEI too much. I would love for people to focus more. Yes, it's about the numbers. Yes, I get all of that. Let's focus on the inclusivity part. Because just as you have the numbers, doesn't mean those people feel welcome, feel like they belong. There's already an in group, they're sitting in the out group. There's all these pieces to making an inclusive culture as well. And don't forget the equity piece, right? Let's do that too. Let's pay people, the right pay and not discriminate. Like all of those pieces, there's so much that goes into it. But I think inclusivity for me right now, I see so much happening in the marketplace, in the world, that makes it easy to bring in the numbers, but not know how to make an inclusive environment for all. And I'm not saying the work is hard. Anybody in this space, in the DEI space, will tell you the work is difficult, hard, and challenging, and frustrating, all of those things. But the work needs to be done, but it is difficult, right? So it's a labor of love, right? In the end.
Well, usually the good work, honestly, is the stuff that's challenging, right? And it requires empathy. It requires you to dig deep into yourself, which takes work and vulnerability and all of those things. But to your point about that inclusivity, if I'm hiring people and I'm checking that diversity box, but I have only, white cisgendered male leaders, right? Like on my leadership page, that doesn't show inclusivity to those people that are coming to apply for your company or that you're interviewing for your company. Moreover, right, if you're ignoring national observations, if you're ignoring, growth paths for marginalized groups, right, they're going to know that, whether they go online to find it, whether they talk to the employees internally to find it, they're going to know that, and it's all going to impact your hiring. And so I love the fact that you have this tandem of culture and hiring in your organization, because they're not separate. They go hand in hand, and they have to both be strong.
Right, absolutely. And listen, I want to bring every good person a hug, right? I want them to be sold on the dream, right? But unless they feel like they are going to have a place there and have a path towards career development, have a path to all, it just doesn't matter in the end. If they can't feel like their voice is heard, they can bring their authentic selves to the table, none of the rest matters. I don't care how great your benefits are, how strong you believe all the things are that you have on the other side of the table. That inclusive feeling, sometimes if it's not found, they'll leave anyway, right? Employees who feel included feel happier and are more productive. Bottom line, it's statistically proven, right? So people always want to argue with me about the McKinsey statistics about, inclusivity. There's no, it's just the truth. It's just a fact. It's proven in the numbers that this works. So why aren't you doing it? Why is this so hard for you? Right? I struggle to find the reason not to do it. Right? It doesn't cost you any more money necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's what you said. It's difficult. It's challenging. It makes you uncomfortable, right? Those are the reasons why that people don't do it, because they want to just stay in their bubble of comfortability and they don't want to do the hard work, right? And not that maybe they don't not want to do it. They don't know how to do the hard work, and they don't want to call on people to help them.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting fact too. Like, if you don't know how to do something, you Google it, right? Or you don't know the answer, you Google it. So why not step out of your comfort zone and say, I don't know the answer. Let me bring in somebody that does know the answer or understands how we can do this effectively, and not phone it in, right? Because I think too, if we're looking at hiring right now and looking at where candidates are at in this market, they're like, listen, I know you're just checking the boxes and giving me that spiel you give everybody else. We're working on it. We're doing things, what we have ERGs and we're doing all that sounds all good and sounds great, but what success have you seen from it? What has the journey been like for this organization? Where did you start from? right? I'd rather an organization say to me, guess what? We're not really working on it, but we want to, but we have no idea where to start. Then sell me the dream of this is the most inclusive culture. We love everybody. Everybody's so great. Because it's just not true when you get into it. And then you're unhappy because you've been sold the dream that isn't there. It's just not there. And it's usually very identifiable that it's not there in a couple of weeks, right? And that person leaves. Mm-hmm. And here you are starting all over again. So don't sell the dream, just be truthful about where you are in the process.
Yeah. And I think what people forget is there's strength in saying, I don't know, but let me get somebody that does. Let me find out how I can get that information for you, right? As an employee, people would rather you say to them, I don't know, but let me get you an answer, than say some BS that you pull out of thin air, right? I mean, they want you to be authentic and honest and truthful. And if that truth is like, we're not even thinking about it, but tell us what we can do to think about it, right? Like that's enough for them to be like, okay, they're moving in the right direction. They admit they don't know, and they're admitting that I can help them.
Right. And sometimes as a person who has been notoriously in organizations where they don't have it, or not the organization I'm at now, that we were already way above the mark, but in organizations in the past, they're like, listen, we need you to start it. Because we don't even know what we don't know, right? And I was glad to do it because I like that kind of thing. I love to come in and change things and set up systems and processes and figure out how we can do things better. So sometimes you're just looking for that person that can be the change agent for your organization. But if they hadn't said those things to me, I would have probably gone in blind. And so I've been able to, over my career, been able to change organizations for the better in that way because people were honest with me. And to be honest, the ones that weren't, I've left quickly, right? Because the only Black girl in the room, so after a while, that gets old.
Yeah, I'm sure that does. It's not a comfortable feeling.
No, it's not. And especially if, it's the, over 40, dairy playing golf crowd. I play golf, but it's not a comfortable feeling for me in the room. And I'm usually the loudest in the room, right? But it still doesn't end up feeling comfortable at the end of the day, because no matter what, bias and all of these other things will come into play into that room, and my voice gets pushed down. And that is never a good feeling for anybody. Well, it's just.
And then you get labeled as, not you specifically, but people in that situation get labeled as aggressive or, too assertive, and it's like, but you do the same stuff, you know what I mean? Like, but you just see it that way because this is different. And this is the preconceived notions that you've had since you've been growing up, right? Like it's all that stuff, those micro and macro aggressions that I'm like, we can avoid these if we just educate people.
Absolutely aggressive. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that I'm aggressive or too opinionated. Okay, I guess I'm not supposed to have an opinion at all. I'm supposed to sit quiet in the room, and it's just ridiculous, right? And I think people think, that they're not doing those things, of course, because they don't have the education to even understand what those are. If you said macro and microaggression to most people, though they've read about it, maybe, they still don't understand that they're doing it, right? Like, oh, your hair, can I touch? No, you can't touch my hair. Like those things happen to me in rooms, right? So it's unbelievable.
Like, would you ask that of a pregnant woman? Can I touch your stomach? No. Like, no, you don't ask that in the workplace.
It's just unbelievable. No, you can't. Like, what?
What world do we live in?
Unbelievable.
Do you unbelievable?
Some of the things I've had. We could literally have a whole nother session on the things I've seen and have happened to me in the workplace. It's unreal what people feel comfortable doing to other people.
But like, they wouldn't ask their like white coworker that question.
No.
Which is like ludicrous. Like, where is this coming from?
I have no idea. And, my mother, so we're going to use my mother in this podcast, she'll love it, is that, she feels that they feel some sense of entitlement to do that, right? And that it all comes together in a big ball of why we are the way we are in these organizations over time. And we've built that sense of entitlement and ownership and authority, having authority over people and enables us to treat people this way. And it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible, horrible thing to watch. And for those that don't speak up, whether it's happening to them or for the people standing around looking at it happening, it's a sad thing, right? And some people can't speak for themselves. I have a really introverted friend, and she would never, I don't care what's going on, would never, ever say anything against anybody in authority, right? But as the person who constantly battles with authority, I'm glad to be the voice for her and be like, what are you doing, right? And we have to have those allies in the workplace to be able to do that as well. It's not just our journey, it's everyone else's journey. It's everyone's journey. It should be a journey together.
Diversity, empathy, equality, inclusion, teamwork, and transparency. Those are words that mean something to me, and I hope they mean something to you. Those are 6 values that a people partner lives by every single day. Those are 6 values that I live by every single day, not only as the CEO of a people partner, but in general. If you are somebody like me who lives these 6 values every day and wants to share that with the world, I encourage you to purchase a people partner t-shirts. These t-shirts are navy blue, come in a men's cut, and range in size from medium to 2XL. On the front, you will find the diamond-shaped rainbow hearts that we have in our logo. On the back, you will see the 6 values in rainbow colors. These t-shirts are $30 and can be shipped anywhere in the US. If you're outside of the country looking for a shirt, send me a message. If none of these sizes fit for you, let me know and I'll add you on the list for the next order. I hope to see you all in your A People Partner swag and representing those 6 values that mean so much to us. Thank you for your purchase. It's interesting to hear you say that, because I'm one of those people like you who will call out, like, I'm like if I saw that happen, I'd be like, what are you asking right now? Like I call that stuff out, and I've done it my whole life, whether it was, people of color, whether it was people that had, challenges or disabilities, physical or mental, right? Like I call that out because sometimes they, like you said, they can't speak for themselves. They don't feel comfortable doing it. They're in a room where they're already uncomfortable, and adding that to it is not helping, right? And so like you're going to see a post, but like I went to the nail salon, I got my nails done, and I did red, gold, and black. Red, gold, and green, which are the colors for Black History Month. It's not Black History Month, but you know why I did it? So that when people ask me, I can educate them. I can give them facts about Black history. And it was my way of saying, I can be an ally and I can do more, but I can do it in a way that like people are going to ask me and I'm just going to give them this history, right? But I'm also maybe helping somebody else who doesn't feel so comfortable in their, as a Black person, to be able to say these things that really need to be said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that goes to, let's round it back to hiring. I think our jobs as recruiters, as the frontline voice to some of this stuff, have to be that challenge for hiring managers and for people who are obviously putting bias into the process, who have made the process not inclusive, we're not doing any of those things. That's what recruiters are there for. That's what talent leaders should be doing. It's stopping some of the old ways from happening in the future. And that's, I think, and listen, I know that all recruiters are not decision makers, but they can speak up and say, this is what I think we should be doing to get these candidates. And this shouldn't just be about numbers. This should be, how do we make this more inclusive, even once I bring them on board. I always say talent needs a seat at the table, having this conversation another time, because we're the front line. We're selling the dream to candidates, right? we're selling that dream every day, And so not letting them have a seat at the table and not letting them be influential, especially in this area in D&I, it's a mistake. It's an absolute mistake.
It 100% is. I mean, even when you were talking about like the recruiting piece and some of those antiquated, notions, I think about education first and foremost. Like, who all of a sudden decided that you have to have a degree to do all these jobs? And as we can see, getting rid of, affirmative action in colleges and things like that, right? Like now we're going the wrong direction with everything that we're doing. And so it's like, but this requirement for education, when you maybe have people in the same role that don't have an education, right? Why are we now all of a sudden creating these random rules that require an education for something that you really don't need an education for? Our education's great, yeah, but you offer some sort of tuition program. Why can't they get it when they get there if they want it?
I hate that qualification is for so many roles, right? Unless I'm an engineer, right? I could see that, right?
Or a doctor.
But or a doctor. Well, okay, I kind of want my doctor to have one of those. But but things like that, they're very technical type of things. I could see and understand that you need not necessarily a degree. Well, for some things, it's definitely a degree, but certifications and all of those things. But most things can be trained without that, right? If you bring some of that soft skill or some experience in your past, I don't know why you can't train to do this job. Like I know some of the best recruiters I know do not have degrees, right? Because it's just not a job that you necessarily need a degree to do. Mm-hmm. It's about recruiting is sales, right? Most of the time, sales, process, all things that can be trained. And even at Hub, we have a boot camp program where we bring in people who've never been in the space and teach them over a 4 to 5 week, period, how to be a recruiter, right? Because you don't need to have all this background, this fancy degree from all these fancy places to be able to do this job. And it's just one example, and specifically because we're talking about hiring, but I agree with you. I don't know who made that rule. I find it astounding that we're still sticking to it. Especially if someone has like 10 to 20 years experience, you're still looking for that bachelor's, which by the way is probably irrelevant at this point because what they were teaching back then isn't even now. You know what I mean? It's just so ridiculous to me. It just holds people back, and it holds you from getting some really good candidates across the finish line, right? Just because of that piece of paper. Yep. And that also goes to the DEI piece. How many people can afford school, right? How many people come from neighborhoods where their school system was promoting them to go to college? I mean, it just doesn't happen in some neighborhoods. It's not afforded to them. So now they get to corporate, and what are they supposed to do, right? Build a tuition program in-house, build a training program in-house. I just wrote about slavery not being beneficial to Black people because that's out in Florida right now, right? The notion that slavery was beneficial because we learned how to blacksmith, right? These kind of things that have always existed, these kind of mindsets that have existed, but for some reason we're going the opposite direction with what we're allowing to get by us. And I don't know why, because to me, it's the loudest we've ever been on social media and things like that. But these things are slipping by. Florida is turning into this crazy state where it's just unbelievable that a board of education would say, okay, let's teach slavery was beneficial. Right?
By the way, Desiree, I heard this the other day and I practically jumped out of my skin. I was like, who? And I know who, but who in their right mind, it says slavery was beneficial. Like that in and of itself means that you do not know really what was happening. And you're trying to make something great that wasn't, right? Like you didn't live that experience. So how dare you diminish what that was?
Or you do know, what's worse is that you do know, and you're trying to make it something good. That's crazy town, right? That's like, you have to have lost some marbles along the way.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know, like, And I'm sitting here thinking, when I heard it, I was like, am I like in another dimension? I don't know how, like you said, we're going backwards. How is it that
Yeah.
we're taking leaps and bounds in the wrong direction? And one of the sort of thoughts that I had, and so then one of my podcast guests was like, it's a power struggle, right? Once we're now more educated individuals and or we're having the freedom to speak out, right? They want to stifle the power. They want to say, "Ooh,
Right.
we're relinquishing control. We're losing control. So now let's limit what we do provide for education in terms of banning books and other things like that. Let's ban or eliminate opportunities for people to get different perspectives so that they can't speak out about them." And I think that
I
that's really what
totally
that's
agree.
coming to.
Oh, absolutely. It's totally a power thing, right? Someone always has to feel or be in power. And that it's sad to watch, right? And that's why I keep talking about people speaking up, because the more we do that, the more things will change for the better, not this slow slide. And we were having this argument about whether it's a slow slide or a fast slide right now. And I believe it's really fast slide we're on, right? It's gone from where 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we were hiring chief diversity officers and doing all these things at these organizations, and it just went, we're all the way back to where we were. Well, they were hiring chief diversity officers and not giving them any money, or not giving them a plan, or giving them a seat at the table, not having any real job or idea or actionable things they could do. So when it came down to crunch time for layoff time, guess who's the first to go, right? So it's just a sad state of affairs that we got slavery is beneficial, and you all need a degree to do a job you don't need a degree to do something in, and that makes DEI in hiring so difficult. All of those things, and you mix them up all together, and you make it really difficult for these organizations and the ones that want to move the needle, the ability to move the needle. And it has to come from the C-suite. If the C-suite doesn't believe in it, I'm telling you, it's almost like a done deal.
Right.
It's impossible.
You're 100% right, because the C-suite, they sort of march to the rhythm, and everybody else not gets in line, but they sort of see that that's the culture, and they have the choice to agree or disagree and move on or stay in, right? And so that's where the C-suite has to be the one driving those initiatives. And if they're not, then maybe where the C-suite stands.
Right, absolutely. And I'm not saying the C-suite is completely responsible, right? They have leaders they put in charge to do these things. But if you get it all the way up to the C-suite and the C-suite keeps knocking it down, then why are you still, not to put those initiatives forward eventually,
Right?
You just stop, because you're like, okay, it's not going to get anywhere anyway. So let me just stop it, right? And so that's the frustration of so many leaders right now, is why even do it? It's not going to go anywhere.
Right. And you mentioned this earlier, and I want to circle back to it. Employee resource groups, right? Yeah. There's some good, I think, that comes from those, but I think a lot of companies put those up as a way to say, oh, we're inclusive, there's an employee resource group for you. But I don't think that's enough. How do you feel about employee resource groups?
Yeah, I mean, I like them. I think they build community within organizations, but what I don't like is ERGs that get no funding, that get, they just get the title. You're all in a Zoom call once a month, and you're like, hey, how you guys doing? And all the Black people in the room, or all the queer people, and it just, you know what I mean? It just falls flat, right? Unless you give them the opportunity to do things that mean something to that particular culture, organization, whatever, it doesn't hold any value unless you have them have speakers or that means something to them, unless you allow that ERG group to potentially present to the whole organization something they've been working on. All of it just falls flat, right? I've seen so many ERGs just have no money. Well, what's the point, right? I can jump on a Zoom call with all the Black people. It's not a group. Right? We're not doing anything because we don't have any money. Right? And ERGs are usually established in very significantly financially stable companies, because that's the ones that have the power to do that kind of work. I can see the negative side of it too, because I do believe it's not enough. I think there should be organizations that are taking a very whole look at their organization as whole, and maybe ERGs are part of the plan, but they aren't the only plan, right? There has to be more to the plan than that.
Right. The ERG isn't like, oh, we did that, done, right? Like it's a piece of the entire puzzle.
Right. Absolutely. The puzzle is so many other things. It's, it's looking at metrics, it's looking at employee engagement, it's looking at doing surveys, seeing how people are feeling, exit interviews, stay interviews, doing all of that, and taking those stay interviews and doing something with those things and figuring out what's happening as a whole is so important. Not just setting up an ERG, giving them $2,500 and saying, go run with it. Good, check the box, we are diverse. Right. We've got this DI thing down. We're rocking and rolling.
You're funny. Let's flip, and we talked a little bit about this too, the equality piece, right? So we talked about that pay transparency thing that's coming down the pike. And for me, like, you and I are both part of HR for You, right?
Yeah.
I believe you are a member of HR.
Yeah,
for
I am.
You. So so I mean, living wage employment, why is that a thing that we have to fight for? Why are we still arguing this point? Moreover, why, and I know that they're two different concepts, but why is minimum wage still $7.25 federally? Who can live off of that?
Isn't it the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard in your entire life, that somebody today would have to live off of $7.25?
And that number hasn't increased since 2009. You're telling me nothing has increased in price since 2009?
Ridiculous. I don't know. I was just telling somebody the other day about working at McDonald's. In-N-Out Burger. There's an In-N-Out Burger near me, and like a closer makes $21 an hour and all these things. And I'm like, sometimes I think these people would be better off going to work at In-N-Out Burger than working for some of these companies that are paying them little to no money. It is a conversation we should not be having, but it goes back to power, right? It goes back someone controlling and stifling the many to keep the few high. And it's always going to be, but in organizations like HR for You, we're constantly fighting and bringing people to actionable change. That's going to make the difference in the end. But this minimum wage, I just heard that, by the way, the other day, that was the minimum wage. And I was like, what is going on?
Like,
it's insane.
I did a whole article about it because I was like, I did like all the cost of living in all the different states. And I was like, there's not a single state where you can live for that amount of money. Even as a single human being, you cannot live and have a house and food and like anything, like a vehicle. Like, so am I supposed to walk to work from the sidewalk? Like, I don't, like, you know what I mean? Like, how does anybody afford that? And people argue that like those entry level jobs, like you were talking about, maybe at like an In-N-Out Burger or something like that, right? They're designed to be for, entry level high school individuals who are coming in with no experience. And that's great, but like, that's not all the only people that work there.
That's just BS and rhetoric, right? Like, let's just tell everybody that's what they're made for. It's not. It's made to reduce the most profits and revenue at the end of the day, right? Keep the margins where they need to be. That's a load of, no. So, but I really don't understand it, because and I know that just rent in most of these places, in most cities, I live in Austin, and you're not living here for you're living with 5 or 6 people if you make $7.25 an hour, right? And then the argument about they just don't want to work hard or that's my favorite argument. Please let me go down that freaking lane. Yes, they don't want to eat. They don't want to have a car. They want to live for the rest of that is their goal. Really?
Desiree, you and I are speaking the same language. I was talking to somebody the other day that they're like, we literally were having a conversation. They're like, how do you know when like people need your help? I said, when they make comments like nobody wants to work. And I was like, really? Because I work with job seekers all the time. And I even heard a single one of them say, I don't want to work. Maybe they don't want to work for you in your company, but like nobody is like, unless you're retiring, nobody's like, I don't want to work. Like they don't want to live off of free resources from the government, or, handouts from family members, or gifts that like, they don't want to live off of that. They want to work. People want purpose. They want to work for a purpose and provide value and do things that they like. It's just a matter of they don't want to work for toxic companies, for toxic leaders that have no semblance of the harm that they're doing to people.
Health is a big thing. Listen, I have worked in toxic environments. I will never do it. It broke me, right? It broke me where I didn't want to work, right? Because it felt awful and I felt sick every day, and mentally it was a challenge for me. I love to work. Anybody will tell you that. I love my job. I love going to work. I probably work a little too much, but I love it. So don't tell me I didn't want to work. I didn't want to work for that place, for that individual at that time, because it was breaking me. But to say that someone does not want to have a house or a place to live, a roof over their head, a car, food for their kids, is absolutely the worst argument. I hear it all the time. People just don't want to work. It's absolutely the worst argument to bring to me, because it's just stupid. People want to feel valued and have value in their life. They don't want to be living. My favorite is for the homeless, right? They just don't want to work. They want to drink all day. They want to do all these things. It's just the absolute worst argument to bring to me, because it's not about that. It's about challenges in their life. It's about mental illness, just circumstances. Things happen. Things can happen to anybody at any time, right? And most Americans are like one step away from being homeless, right? We've seen it in the layoffs. I don't know if you have, but on LinkedIn, there's a post almost every day in my feed about someone who's about to get kicked out of their house, can't afford their car, stuff like and it's one paycheck away. It's all you need to be a step from out of your house. So I don't like the argument. It's why I'm in HR for you. It's why I talk about it all the time, because we need to do better, right? We need to do better for people.
We need to do better as a society. I mean, like you were saying, right? I mean, people are not choosing to be homeless, right? And it's like, oh, they can go to any store and get a job application. I was like, well, what if they don't have a phone? How do you call them? Right. How do you call them? How do you send them something? How do you do anything like that? And then with all of these antiquated notions we have, well, now you have to have a degree, and now you have to look a certain way, and you have to dress a certain way, and what if they can't afford that, right? Like, I was talking to somebody and she wants to go get a new job, and she's like, I have to buy a whole new wardrobe, and I don't have money for that.
Right. Yes, very tough. Very, very tough situations. I mean, I see more organizations now than I've seen in the past, where they have like thrift stores and consignment stores that do like the women to work and things. And I applaud them wholeheartedly, because I remember from corporate America feeling like I had to keep up with the Joneses, as they say. And that was it was tough when, I was younger, not making any money. I'm like, I don't have money to buy these suits and thank God I don't work in that anymore. But to keep up with the Joneses, it was hard. And I can't imagine trying to come back to work from a bad situation or a layoff where I'm just scrambling by to pay my bills, to then have to keep up with the Joneses. Oh, the circle of this whole thing is so vicious. It's a vicious circle.
And I'm sure you are too, but I am a big advocate of pay transparency, because I ask the question all the time, why is this something we're holding on to? Why is it a secret? And, coming from HR, right? Like, you can't talk about what other people are making. You can't, I'm like, why? If we are justified in our reason for paying this person more than we're paying this person, then we should be able to explain that based on hard fact and experience, right? Like, that's what it should come down to. And so I'm a firm believer that, like, your policy, your pay transparency should say, if you are this title and you have this many years of experience, this is your pay.
Right.
And there's a range, yes, because as you grow, right, as you add more experiences, you grow in that range. But if you're qualifying it with, here are all the qualifiers that are not unattainable, right, that are fair and equal, right, That's the key, that are fair and equal. Then, right, there's no discrepancy to have to argue. You make this money and you make this money because you have less experience. Simple as that.
Right. If you can't be, to me, it's the perpetual lie, right? If you are not transparent about your pay. So we don't know why we gave this guy this and this guy that. If that's what you're saying to me, right? Because you don't want to tell me. You have no reason why. And most of the time that's not true. There's a reason, right? So why not tell people? Why not let people talk freely? I think it's absolutely horrible. And I applaud the states that already have it. I hope we definitely get there when it's all across the board, because I just don't understand it as well. I think that it holds on to the corporate power idea that we've talked about numerous times here, is that we hold all the power and everything's a secret and there's this little room with all these people. It's ridiculous, right? Stop. Be fair to people, be equitable, right? Be inclusive, be diverse, be these things, and you'll have a better company. It's just that easy.
And I've been telling all my job seekers that I'm working with all the secrets. So there's that BLS.gov, right? Where all of the employers put in their data, and the employers don't outwardly tell you that. So I just keep putting it. I'm like, job seekers, go here, go here. I'm like, when all the HR people hate my guts, that's okay. Because I'm not about to keep holding secrets that don't need to be kept secret.
Right.
And so
why is it secret?
Because somebody said so somewhere along the line.
Right.
The other thing in terms of equality and beside the pay piece, which is a big part of it, right? People don't realize that equality is quality for decision making, equality for internal mobility, right? When we think about succession planning, equality in opportunity, when we look at those, as we talked about, those tuition reimbursements, or why not having tuition expense programs versus reimbursements, because people then have to still pay out of their pocket, right? So all of that, like, equality goes beyond that pay. Equality is equal treatment, equal opportunity. And that's why we have equal opportunity policies. We just never really were following them. We put them in all these job postings. We're like, oh, everybody's an equal opportunity employer, but are they really?
Right. And that comes down to organizational development too, right? Like, just because you're an your employee, opportunity compliant doesn't mean that you've built a system for organizational development that is fair and equitable to all. If I like Joe Bob and I call Joe Bob in my office and I'm like, I think you're going to be great as a manager, but you have the same skill set as Timmy Joe over here, right? How are we moving both and giving them the same opportunities to grow within the organization? It can't be because I like Jimmy Bob more, right? It just can't be. It has to be a fair situation and a fair way to both determine who gets to move up. And it's not that way right now. That's not how the world works. And in most organizations, right? It's who you know. And, I still talk about this all the time. The world will always, to some degree, it's a who you know game, right? And you just have to outsmart it, right? Outsmart that game.
And so I want to sort of flip it to you and say, what other things are you doing, or opportunities that you see coming up that you think that the community would like to know more about?
Yeah, I am doing, so I am just launching in September my side hustle, I guess they say. I'm doing some consulting work with other organizations to bring around the idea to their organization about anti-racism, doing some more speaking engagements. So if you want to book me, I'm available. Doing some of that. And, that's been a long journey for me. I really was very focused on my work and hub and my organization. But I think that the messages need to be spread a little bit more. So it is definitely in my future come this fall, taking it a little easy this summer, not really, but trying, and get back into it in the fall. And, Hub is doing great work on the diversity side. We wrote our first strategic plan this year, doing some big things there and some big movements there too as well. So it's a super exciting time for me in this space. And I can't wait to see what I can do more of in the future.
I can't wait to see what you're going to do more of. I think you're going to rule the world. So a couple things I want to like just learn more about you as a person, because in your community spotlight, you shared that you don't like chocolate.
Ew.
None.
I have
Like
an
not
aversion.
milk, not dark, not white, nothing.
No, like I hate when people give me it as a gift because I'm like, it just drives me nuts because I have to give it to my wife because I'm like, I can't eat this. It doesn't taste good to me. I don't get the fascination with it. I will say this. I will say that every once in a while, in like a weird moment, I'll eat a Reese's peanut butter cup. But I'm a gummy bear, jelly bean, like Swedish fish type of girl. Throw me like a big thing of gummy stuff, and I'm like all for it. But no, I do not like chocolate.
That's funny. I'm like a chocoholic, like everything. Like when I
I,
get ice cream, it's like chocolate ice cream, chocolate sprinkles, chocolate chips, like everything chocolate. And people are like, what is wrong with you?
that
I'm
is
like,
my wife.
I just love all the chocolate.
I, it's like a weird thing in our candy. Like we have like a candy closet because we're not allowed to really go in there. But like there's like all this chocolate and then all this gummy stuff. And then you open our freezer and it's like chocolate ice cream of every variety for my wife. And I'm like, these are so gross. So she knows I'll never touch him. I think she does it because she knows I'm never going to touch him.
That's awesome. The other thing you shared is that you left a promising career in marketing to become a bartender, which is really neat.
I did. I was in college and honestly couldn't find my way. I'm one of those people who struggled in college. I thought I knew I had a plan. I would, so gung-ho to work internationally and did some of that. And I just up and quit one day. Very promising career. And a friend, no plan, never do that again. But my friend was like, listen, I own a bar. I'm working at the bar. Yeah, I went and worked at the bar and I stayed in hospitality for almost 20 years after that. I loved the people. I loved the energy of hospitality and ended up finally leaving when I had become director of sales and marketing for an organization. But it was a journey and an interesting one. And most people are like, there's no way that you did all these things and were a bartender for I was a bartender for a long time, a very long time, but it was fun.
I do love that because people don't see all of the skills that you gain from being a bartender, right? They're like, you mix drinks, you serve people, but I'm like, you're basically the living therapist. You're, you have to deal with all of the problems. You're also serving food, right? Like it's not as simple as people think it is. And it provides you with a lot of different skills, conflict resolution, conflict management, right? All of those things that you can use for other opportunities. And that's why I'm always like for job seekers, I'm like, don't just say, oh, I was a bartender, right? You're a bartender who has all these other skills that you gained while working there.
I love seeing candidates with that on their resume. I'm telling you, sparks true love for them. Because I'm like, I know you can do all these things and do it all at the same time, right? And you work crazy hours and you're used to nonsense and chaos and I love it. You can win the war there. You can win it anywhere.
That's awesome. So where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, my LinkedIn, of course, is D Goldey or Desiree Goldey. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram is recruiter_gold. You can catch me there. And my website will be up in September, and that'll be DesireeGoldey.com. So super excited for all the things and reach out. I really do respond to as many messages as I can. I get a lot of DMs, but I do my best to respond.
She responded to me. So, I mean, it's true that she does respond.
I do my best.
So before you go, I want to ask you sort of my ending question that I love asking people. People are probably sick of hearing this, but Maya Angelou is my favorite poet ever. I wish I had the opportunity to meet her and I did not. But she had this great quote that says, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Is there a time for you when that was true?
Yeah, I can go both ways with this. I've had that experience as the person who received that You know, I had a manager, and I'll never forget this person. It was a 60-year-old white guy. Like, we couldn't be more like disjointed in backgrounds or experience. And he was the best human on the face of the planet. I mean, he advanced my career, he did all of the things, and he just made me feel welcome all the time, made sure my voice felt heard, and made me feel like I mattered. And that was so important for me at the time in my career, where I just didn't know what was happening. He was the best. And I just had recently had a job seeker say to me that, you know, without sitting and spending time with me, that they don't know how they would have felt about the journey that they're on, that it gave them confidence and strength to go back out into it. And that for me is all I want. I want you to spend 10 minutes with me. And whether we talk about or get you to your next job or anything like that, I want you to feel like you matter and you're confident and strong, and you got this, girl. You got this, guy. You're going to go rock the world, right? That's what I want you to feel like. So he made me feel that way, and I hope I'm paying it forward to other people.
That's awesome. I'm glad it's rung true for you on both ends, because honestly, the way that people make us feel is more than they even know. I mean, some people don't even know that the feeling that they give to us just by being who they are in a positive or a negative way. And so for you, I'm sure that 60-year-old white guy that you were talking about, who's probably he's not 60 anymore, but 60-year-old white guy, he may not have even ever really understood the impact that he made in your life. Even if you tried to verbalize it, he still may not have understood the impact. And that's just an incredible thing to know, that somebody impacted your life so greatly, and they may never actually know how much.
I know. And he didn't do it for that reason. And that made it even more that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Desiree.
Of course. It was just so much fun.
You were a pleasure. And to everybody out there, as I end every episode, lead with empathy, act with kindness. Bye, y'all. Thank you for listening to All People Podcast. If you enjoyed our show, I'd love for you to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. The work doesn't end here. If you want to keep the conversation going, find me on LinkedIn or Facebook, or visit my website, apeoplepartnerllc.com. Lead with empathy and act with kindness. Have a great day.